This is the Voyage Report podcast, where you get the scoop on travel. Now, the editor-in-chief of the Voyage Report, Mark Albert.
Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome. If you love adventure and adventure travel, this podcast is for you. We're going to travel the globe with a world-famous mountain biker and explorer. Joining us today is professional mountain biker Mark Matthews, also known as Marky Math. He's talking with us today via Skype from his home in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Mark, welcome to the Voyage Report podcast.
Thank you.
So let's just get this out of the way right off the bat. You're a lot braver than I am, Mark. I watched some of your jumps and your videos, and I mean, you're just nailing it. And I think I'd die trying, probably. You do a lot of traveling for your job. You go to all these competitions, so I can't wait to hear about where you just got back from. So let's start with the three questions we ask all of our guests. First, what has been your biggest discovery while traveling?
For me, it's kind of like maybe the discovery itself is maybe just an epiphany I've had multiple times on different trips. So, for example, when I was recently in Turkey, I'm standing on the top of these like crazy looking formations, and we're filming in this amazingly beautiful location. And I'm thinking to myself, when I'm waiting to drop in, I'm like, man, life's pretty cool. Not many people get to live this sort of life and be in these situations. And there's a lot of background work and struggles that go into it, but it's still worth every second you're there.
So, takes your breath away, it sounds like.
Yeah, I would say that's kind of my biggest discovery, is just coming to the realization that I've been able to make a lot of dreams and ideas a reality.
So fortunate. Many people don't get to do that. What is the favorite place that you've been to?
That's also really tough. There's some beautiful spots in the world I've seen. But for me, I think being home in British Columbia is the very best spot. And it's because our province here is so diverse. One of my favorite spots here would have to be interior British Columbia. It's just a really arid, dry location, almost deserty, like not what you expect when you think Canada. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's got like huge glacial mountains surrounding it. And it's just this really diverse kind of ecosystem with amazingly fun mountain bike riding and other outdoor activities you can do. Like you can go fishing, mountain biking, snowboarding, potentially all on the same day, depending on what time of year it is. So just having that diverse landscape and amazingly fun location is what makes BC my favorite place in the world.
Sounds like a biker's dream.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing here.
What's the next place that you're traveling to?
I will be mostly within Canada all summer, unless some more opportunities come up. But my next big location will be Tibet in October.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what's that for, a competition?
No, it's for a tour company. So I have a good friend of mine who was over at my place a few months ago, and he was showing me photos from this 10-day expedition he did in Tibet, where he went into the backcountry there on mountain bikes. And they went into these amazing locations. They were camping out in nomadic huts, trying out local food, doing huge climbs and descents, and just the landscape looks so amazing. And I'm like, man, how did you like go on this trip? Because I've never really heard of anybody going to Tibet before.
Right.
So he told me, he's like, well, my father-in-law actually moved to Tibet 5 years ago, and he started this company that does tours. So maybe you could promote them on your channels in exchange for a free tour, because they're normally quite expensive. So I reached out to the guy, and he's like, well, I can't really give you a free tour straight up. I don't have that kind of budget with me. But if you want to pick dates that you want to go here, and if you can get a group of people interested that are paid customers, then I will potentially offer you a better deal. I will give you commission on each customer, and then I will cover your flight to come out. I'm like, wow. Oh, that's cool. So I just started promoting like the location on my Instagram, just through stories and a few random photos, being like, hey guys, I'm looking at going to Tibet. It's an amazing looking location. If anyone wants to join me, send me a direct message about details. And within a month, I had 12 people signed up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, which is like, it blew me away. I couldn't believe there was that much interest. I guess it's just such a desired place to go and ride a bike. So, yeah, we have a really fun crew now for the tour. They're all strong riders. I've talked to every person individually, and a few of them are like pretty big fans of my bike sponsor. So they ride all the same bikes, and they're all really keen, active guys. So it's a really cool mix of people we have with us, and it should be an interesting experience going on a 10-day expedition with 12 strangers.
Oh my goodness, that's definitely a trip you're never going to forget, and I don't think they're going to ever forget it either.
Yeah.
That's
So that's the next big one for me. And it's
now,
completely different than what I've ever done before, because normally I'm kind of working with a brand that's a sponsor of mine, and I'm planning how to generate some great content for them. And we get a filmmaker, we get a magazine photographer, and we just put together a specific kind of promotional set of materials and deliverables with a small crew of people, like maybe 3 or 4 of us. Whereas this is completely different, because I'm not doing it for a sponsor. I'm just doing it for the experience and to meet new people. So it's going to be a nice change. There's going to be less pressure to, I guess, deliver and perform content, just being out there and having fun.
And how hard is it to get into Tibet? I mean, did you have to go out for the visa and everything? I don't even know how difficult it is.
For permission to go?
Yeah, into Tibet.
Yeah, I think because it's like all within the Chinese government regulations. You just need to get a Chinese visa. And so far the process is you just take your passport to the embassy, and they keep it for about 1 week. And then they have to process a visa for you to have special permission to enter.
And when is this trip?
For me, it's in October.
In October. Wow. Are you still taking people if some of our listeners are interested, or they're going to have to wait for the next time?
No, they have, he said he can fit up to 20 people. So if anyone's interested, definitely reach out to me, because I'm sure we would love to have a few more guys or girls or whoever wants to go do it. There's definitely some space. And that reminds me, it's actually funny. A week ago, I had one more person sign up, and she's a 55-year-old woman from Victoria who's an active cross-country rider. And she's like, oh, I want to do this ride. And we were hesitant at first because she was like so much older than the rest of the group. And it's quite vigorous and quite high fitness level, the rides were going on. And then I went with the ride with her, and she actually blew me out of the water. So
really?
I just like insanely fit. So never underestimate anyone. We are taking anybody who thinks they're up for the challenge.
All right, listeners, are you up for the challenge? Mark's got 8 slots left. So there you go. If you want to go to Tibet in October, you can get a hold of him. We'll list his social media accounts here at the end of the podcast, and you can reach out. Now, you mentioned about generating all this content when you're on the trip, and I noticed that you call yourself a media athlete in mountain biking. What is a media athlete?
Yeah, well, I just list myself more as a media athlete than a competitive athlete lately. So in our sport, it's fairly small still, and a lot of people either depend on taking 2 approaches to it. You either try to chase all the competition and stay on top of the podium, or you just have to constantly be creating great content for your sponsors and working with photographers and filmmakers to do new videos and provide fresh content that people are going to really enjoy watching. So for myself, I've put in a lot of my energy the last few years into just creating media and just creating like really fun and engaging content for people to enjoy watching. So that's how I consider myself a media athlete, because I don't really compete anymore. I don't think there's many contests I have coming up that I'm planned to enter, unless it's like something that I really think would be a lot of fun. And my sponsors understand that too. I'm just kind of there to promote their image and market them. I'm not really so much there to compete.
You have some videos. You have some videos using GoPros, and I know a lot of people may have GoPros now, but I'll tell you, some of these videos, I think I need a Dramamine or something, because they are really wild.
Yeah, I definitely use a few little tricks to stabilize the footage and make it a little more fun to watch. So I have this thing called a gimbal, which is a little device that has magnets in it, and it's electronic. And it actually slides onto my GoPro slides onto it. And when I turn it on, it kind of stabilizes the footage, and it just mounts onto my chest mount. And it's pretty small too, so it never gets in my way. And the footage is like night and day difference between that and just dropping a GoPro onto your helmet. It makes it like a million times easier to watch. So it's a pretty cool trick, and not a lot of guys are using all the tools they can lately to maximize great content. So it's definitely put me at the advantage too with growing my accounts and just having a unique set of content for people to see.
Now, you've traveled all around the world. You just recently got back from Turkey a couple of days ago. What were you there for?
Yeah, so Turkey was interesting as well. It actually started through someone who was interested in going to Tibet with me.
Wow.
And they realized they couldn't really afford to go, but they were trying to start up this new bike park in Turkey. And as you know, Turkey is one of those countries that, like, it's kind of developing, but not really. Like, it's just with the political unrest right now. So it's really hard for riders to get a developed mountain bike community there and scene happening. So there's a ski resort there, and the guy he's like so passionate about riding. For the last 6 months, all he's been doing is like volunteering his time to get a new bike trail built in the ski hill. And the CEO of the mountain is letting people ride for free, and they're just trying to generate interest and build a mountain bike community in that area. And he reached out to me and he's like, "Hey man, do you know anyone who'd like to do a story on this? And I can probably help you get to Turkey for free if you want to do this. And
Wow.
if we can involve a sponsor." So I reached out to one of my filmmaker friends, and he's contracted out by my wheel sponsor. We're like, okay, we can make this a video for my wheel sponsor at the same time. So it kind of worked out well for everybody. And then with that, we did a bit more research, and we discovered that Cappadocia is only 45 minutes away from this ski hill. And the riding there is like pretty unknown. No one's really been there to mountain bike before, besides a few little tours that happen, like local tours. But it's not a destination known on a global scale, and it's so unique looking. I'm sure you've seen Cappadocia before with the hot air balloons and the really cool sandstorm formations and ancient caves. So we're like, yeah, let's go explore Cappadocia while we're at it and see what we can find around there. And maybe there's some potential mountain biking that's actually really fun. So that's kind of what happened. We just flew there and kind of with a blind eye and took what we could find.
That's so great. You're helping to open up a park there in Turkey, and then you go to this really amazing terrain. I mean, it almost looks like another planet. I was looking at some of your photos in your media, and it's absolutely incredible. I was in Turkey a couple of years ago in Istanbul and Ephesus, but I never made it there. Just incredible. Did it surprise you?
Yeah, like we did not expect, like I knew what it would look like, but the second we were driving down the highway and it started to look like what we saw in photos, we're like, holy, this place is amazing. Like, it's just, I wish I had done more research about the area before going and like read up the history on it, because there's so many cool like ancient winemaking caves and monasteries, and there must be so much history there, because I've heard that people had been living in these little dwellings since like 200 AD, which is so long ago, right? So it would be really cool to go back there and do more of like a touristy thing rather than just being there to work, and really learning about everything there, because it was really wild. We actually slept in one of the old winemaking caves one night. We camped out there for 2 nights in a row and did the hot air balloons at sunrise one morning, and then pedaled back up the mountain to our camp and just spent all day filming. It was amazing.
I mean, it really sort of puts you in your place in the world and in the universe and in time when you are sleeping in a cave, I suppose, that people have been sleeping in for millennia.
Yep, definitely. And we didn't bring any camping gear with us because we weren't expecting to camp on the whole trip. So it was pretty uncomfortable for 2 nights in a row, but everyone was so excited. Like, no one cared about sleeping on the rocks. We just wanted to wake up the second the sun was coming up and go ride more and go explore, and just being out there and taking our time was really what we were trying to do. Just have long days, like sunrise to sunset every day, but not really feeling rushed to get our content done. Just enjoy every second of it, because it was such a wild place. Never seen anything like it.
Wow. What was the temperature like?
It was in Celsius around 20 degrees, so 60s, 70s every day.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
It was a nice temperature for riding a bike. It wasn't too hot. The days that it was really hot, it was very windy, so that kind of made up for it.
And I think you also recently went to Peru. Did the altitude there ever get at you? Were you in any of the higher elevations where it really gets thin air? Yeah,
the village we stayed in was just outside of a town called Cusco, which sits at a few thousand meters elevation.
The gateway to Machu Picchu.
Yeah, we did Machu Picchu one day, which was really cool. We had a free day and we went down there and checked it out. And the elevation change between Machu Picchu and where we were staying was huge. It was like within a few thousand feet difference. So where we were staying was like if you were taking deep breaths, you would feel it. Like your lungs would never feel full. But it was pretty mellow. Like it didn't really affect you for everyday activities. But as soon as we got up in the mountains, even higher, and we started climbing and pedaling, it was definitely pretty hard. You feel your coordination kind of decline, and you start thinking slower, and it's pretty challenging. I don't know how these mountaineer guys do it for like weeks at a time.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah. Well, listeners, I have to, in full disclosure, I've never been mountain biking, and you're not going to see any of that at voyagereport.com because I'm not that talented. But we do have a top travel tips in 2 minutes video for Cusco and for Peru under our destinations tab, voyagereport.com. Just click on destinations and then get to Peru. You were there for how long?
Just a little under 2 weeks. I think it was 12 days.
Wow. And you were mountain biking for most of it?
Yeah, in Cusco, and then in a town called Ollantaytambo, which is where the train for Machu Picchu starts. And the people we were staying with have a piece of property in that town. So we rode some of the local trails around that town, went up to the mountains above town, and just kind of did a little expedition, seeing what we could find to get some nice pictures. And it was a pretty cool experience. It was a really last-minute decision to go there as well. So I'm pretty happy I went.
Yeah, some of those last-minute decisions are the best. Is there anywhere on Earth you would not go to mountain bike?
I wouldn't go to Syria right now.
Yeah, Syria would be kind of tough.
Yeah, like we were, and where we were in Turkey was only a few hours away from the border between Syria and Turkey. And some of the guys in that bike park were actually some Syrians that ended up escaping into Turkey last year, and they were unemployed. So the resort hired them to help develop bike trails. So it was kind of cool. I got to meet a handful of them, and they were helping us with the trails. And they didn't know any Turkish, which must be a real struggle for them, but they did know a little bit of English. So I was able to communicate with them, and we're kind of giving them trail building tips to help them learn some of the skills. And it was really interesting to hear people's stories, and like just knowing what they went through is pretty insane. It's a pretty brutal situation over there. So it's not the kind of place you'd be wanting to visit right now.
Mark Matthews, not only a professional mountain biker, but also a diplomat, apparently. You have a side career there. Now, you have had some injuries through the years, I think, including, a shattered femur? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's definitely the most extreme injury I've ever had, was at a contest called Red Bull Rampage, which I'm sure some people have heard of before.
In fact, Outside Magazine, I think, called that event the most dangerous bike competition on Earth.
I wouldn't doubt it. It's probably one of the most dangerous competitions on Earth. It's not just the landscape that makes it dangerous. It's the whole situation, because you're up there on exposed ridge lines, steep, like crazy mountainous Utah terrain, which is very dangerous, like very rocky too. And you just get so excited because only 30 guys get invited to this event, the 30 best riders in the world. So when you do get invited, that overtakes everything else. You're like, if I place well in this event, it's going to be like life-changing for me as far as my career goes, because it's such a prestige event in our sport. So not only is the terrain dangerous, but every rider is there to win, and the mentality is pretty aggressive and competitive. And it's just, everyone gets in that mindset where they don't care about anything but riding their very best and pushing outside of their comfort zone. And I'm guilty for being in that same mindset. I was so tuned into doing the craziest run I possibly could that I pretty much blocked out my fear for a few days and kind of went for it, and I paid the price for it. So it's an interesting place and a really wild event to see in person and witness.
Mark, I was actually going to ask you if you are ever afraid doing some of these runs.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for that, it's a risk versus reward kind of something you weigh out. And for me, I was kind of like at the start of my career. It was the first year I was really getting paid anything to ride my bike, and I got invited to the largest event in the world. So I was really kind of letting opportunity overtake fear, where I was like, okay, I'm willing to take this risk because it's going to be a huge opportunity for me. And I definitely went a bit too far with it. And even though I was scared, I kind of pushed through to block it out and just focused on like stomping my tricks and riding my hardest. And I think a lot of the guys are in the same same boat when it comes to that competition, because when people ask, are you ever afraid when you're doing what you're doing? It's like you're always a little afraid, but you never push yourself out of your comfort zone too far. It's a slow progression, like learning any skill, right? Like it takes that 10,000 hours of practice. So you kind of learn one little trick and then you progress to something a little more challenging and kind of work your way up in steps, right? And baby steps. So whenever I'm just regularly riding and filming, I'll be pushing myself from time to time, but I'm never going to be super scared. Whereas a situation like Rampage, when you're put in that scenario, you're really scared, and everyone's really scared. So it's weird. It's hard a question to answer.
Would you do it again?
Rampage?
Yeah.
Don't think I would, just because where my career is right now, I don't need to. So it's kind of like a necessary evil. Like it's one of those things where everyone who gets invited doesn't really want to do it, and everyone has a love-hate relationship with it.
Mm.
And because of that, it's definitely influenced the way the contest has been handled. So there was a lot of complaints after the year I got injured, because there was quite a few injuries that year, major injuries, and the riders were not feeling like it was worth their while to be there. So even if you're a top Red Bull athlete making a really good salary, the prize money for that contest is only about $30,000, which it's a lot of money, but as far as professional sports go, it's nothing. And the risk you're taking, like you're potentially risking your life for 30 grand. So it's not really worth it. And the riders weren't given any compensation for going through Red Bull. They were paying their way to get there. Whereas now they provide a small budget for each rider just to cover your costs to attend. So I think taking steps like that in our sport is really necessary, especially with events like Rampage. You definitely need to give the riders more support if they're going to be competing in an event this crazy. And for me, there's not enough support there for it to be worth my while. And it's also not with what my goals are in riding right now. So I don't think I would do it again, but I definitely want to go back and watch and just enjoy it.
And what are your goals in riding right now? Be doing the media, the content?
Yeah, for myself, like I just want to get out. I want to discover more of the world, and I want to inspire more people to get out and ride bikes, because it's such a cool way to see the world and experience life. And yeah, like just even if it's not like doing crazy tricks and going to like extreme landscapes like we do, even just like inspiring the average person to get out there and ride your bike somewhere when you're on vacation and explore the world like at a different pace. It's really cool what you can see from a bike and how much ground you can cover in a short period of time.
Now, if you looked up the word rookie in the dictionary, I would definitely have my picture right next to it when it comes to mountain biking. I think my only experience, we did rent bikes. I was in South Africa a couple of years ago in Cape Town, and we rented these bikes and hopped on a bus, and they took us to the Cape of Good Hope, which is almost as far south as you can get on the African continent. And then we just rode to this lighthouse, right there at the Cape of Good Hope, and you're just sort of riding through this terrain. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 hours, but you're right. I mean, you don't get that on a bus, on a plane. Trains are beautiful. I love trains, but being out there, feeling the ground go through your body, the vibration, it is really something. So I can barely even imagine what you feel every time that you're on a bike.
Yeah, add some adrenaline and some crazy landscape to that. Yeah, it's definitely a cool way to live life. But I think like even hiking, like I love to hike too, but you can never cover the same amount of ground hiking that you can on a bike. And there's so many cool places you can just go explore on the world by bike. So I think, one of my goals is just inspiring people to get out and explore. Like even if it's not on a bike necessarily, but like that's what I do. So that's why people like to follow where I can go and what's possible to visit.
Your videos certainly take us there, and I want to play a clip for our listeners here. This one is on your website, markymath.com. It's a teaser video of the Rux World Tour in British Columbia that you're a part of. There's very little dialogue in this clip. It's about 45, 50 seconds long, and there's very little dialogue, but you can hear the enthusiasm, the passion, and all that natural sound. So listeners, why don't you listen to this, and we'll talk about it with Mark right afterward.
Woo!
That was a thrilling video, and you just hear all of that natural sound of your environment. I loved that I felt like I could experience the passion and the enthusiasm that you have for this sport.
Yeah, it's really cool the way they put that clip together. So we were trying to capture the experience and trying to capture kind of the process behind these sort of trips. So it's kind of like we're going to kind of have a behind the scenes feel to this video even when it comes out. We're going to show snippets from like the trails we built to like the camping out at night and just having fun with your friends and the laughs and the jokes, and then going out and trying out a jump for the first time and with your friends watching, and people are like laughing or cheering you on, or they're like scared for you. So it's kind of all the emotions and sounds behind everything that's happening.
How has mountain biking changed since you've been a part of it?
Oh, it's changed quite a bit. Like I started when I was 13 years old. And
13? Wow.
Yeah. So 12 years ago. And yeah, it's been just seeing the progression of the sport, because it was such an underground small sport when I started. And I was just like a little kid who was influenced by these older guys. And then I really got into it because I liked BMX riding, and there was lots of good BMX riding around me, but there was even more mountain biking opportunities from where I grew up. So my environment kind of shaped who I am now, because it got me into the sport, and I've kind of watched it evolve, and it's been really cool. It's become like a lot more mainstream and a lot more of a sport that almost anyone can do. Right now, mountain biking is more marketed towards the average person in their like mid 30s to late 40s who just wants to go out and get active in the mountains. Whereas like 15 years ago, it was just watching guys at their beginning of hitting crazy jumps. And now there's so many more offshoots to the sport. It's not just about going big and hitting jumps and doing like the extreme freestyle stuff. There's like an element to all of it. There's your average guy going for their everyday ride, and then there's like the kid who pushes themselves, and then the groups of people who go on vacations riding bikes. So there's so many different aspects to the sport which have channeled off in the last few years, which has been really cool to see. It's been really nice to see our sport grow to a more mainstream environment and get more support from outside brands and recognition in the media. It's really cool.
And listeners, we're going to be asking Mark here in a little bit for his tips for those of you who are listening to this podcast and you've never done mountain biking before, and you may be interested in trying it out. So we'll ask him his tips for the beginner, and we'll also ask him where he recommends that you go mountain biking, either in the U.S. or anywhere around the world. Mark, there's this great pic, I think it's on your Instagram account, in Bali, of you biking through a forest. I think it looks like it's, how do you pronounce it, Mount Batur?
Mount Batur, yeah.
I mean, it just looks incredibly lush, and it seems sort of like you're on top of the world. Tell us about it.
Yeah, that was one of, like, when you were asking me what's, like, the coolest place I've ever traveled to, that was one of the first things that went on my mind, because, I mean, that's, when I was up there for the first time, that's one of the first times I've had that experience where I'm like, wow, this is really amazing. It started off with like a sunrise wake-up call where we hiked up the mountain with our bikes on our backs, which was about 2 hours of hiking. And then we finally get up there, and we're just sitting on the ridgeline of this like crater rim of a volcano. And the sun just pops up, and there was like bananas steaming off the ridge and monkeys running around, and like 100 people up there with their cameras catching the sunset, and just local people making coffee. And so you had a mix of everything, like that culture, the local wildlife, just the views you're taking in, and you're looking over at Lombok. You're looking east at Lombok, which is the one island over from Bali, and it was just like such a cool vista and really nice morning. And I was like, wow, this is pretty crazy being up here right now. It's a wild place.
I was in Bali last year, and there were tons of monkeys everywhere. There's a monkey forest that I went to, and listeners, if you want to go take a look, we've got a top travel tips in 2 minutes video for that as well. Mark, where have you not been that's like on the top of your wish list? Like if you could go mountain biking anywhere, Antarctica or wherever it happens to be, what's on your wish list that you want to get to in the next couple of years?
Yeah, my wish list would be New Zealand. As from what I've heard, it's very similar to British Columbia, but it's a little warmer climate, and the mountain bike opportunities there look amazing. And just like any outdoor opportunity in general, like New Zealand just looks like one of those really cool countries that has almost anything you want to do outside. There's the mountaineering, the mountain biking, the river rafting. They have kind of it all. And it's really starting to grow in the winter months. A lot of mountain bikers are kind of migrating down there for January, February, and riding. And just from the footage I've been seeing over the last couple of years, I've been like really wanting to go down there, but I've never been able to make it work so far. So that's definitely the top of my list right now.
Yeah, you've got to go, and of course, it's when it's winter in North America, it's summer down there. And I went a couple of years ago for my birthday, and I took the train through the North Island and then the ferry to the South Island, and took the train all the way through the South Island. I mean, it really feels as though, Mark, you are in the Lord of the Rings movie series. I mean, that's where they shot part of it, and or all of it, maybe. And it really, you feel like you are in that movie. It's that gorgeous.
Wow. And I know it's very unpopulated for its size too, so there's just so much around you that's empty space, right? Where you can just go out and explore.
All right, so let's get your tips for listeners here. If they are inspired by listening to you here on this podcast, maybe they've never been mountain biking, and they're thinking about trying it and being brave. What are some tips for beginners? What would you recommend that they do?
Yeah, so mountain biking is a pretty intimidating sport to get into when you watch all this footage, especially. So for beginners, I would say the biggest tips is just go out on an easy trail and work on your body position. It's like your base for anything, right? So my tips would be kind of work on, like, just go on YouTube videos and look at neutral position mountain biking and just see what you have to do, like the basics, keeping your pedals level, keeping your knees bent, standing up. And just like kind of starting to get a feel for what an aggressive feel on a mountain bike should be like. And then from there you can kind of build up. And another thing I would recommend for beginners is to join local groups, because mountain biking is such a community-based sport that every town with any little sort of trail network will have a local bike community or society with organized group rides, and there's always lots of beginners everywhere. It's a very friendly opening sport, and you can always find people at your level to ride with and help you progress. And I think that's going to be the biggest help out of anything.
So if we want to try it, but we're a little intimidated after watching your amazing videos, we should look for a local club in our area to reach out.
It's a really good way to go. Like I'm saying, mountain biking is a very opening, community-based sport, especially compared to some other extreme sports out there. And there's, like I was mentioning before, it's such a diverse sport that not everyone's out there to try to rip crazy trails and go as fast as they can. Some people just want to get out there and experience the forest. So yeah, connect with a local club, find out what group rides are going on and what levels people are at, and just kind of go from there. And there's really nothing to be scared of if you're with the right group. It will help you get better, and it'll make it a really positive experience.
I fear, though, that, Mark, if I were to try this, I would need to stop by my local pharmacy or drugstore and pick up a huge packet of Band-Aids before I go out there, just in case.
Yeah, not a bad call.
Yeah, exactly. And so what are some of the favorite places to mountain bike, whether it's in Canada, whether it's in the U.S., anywhere in the world? Where would you recommend for, whether they're beginners or intermediate or even advanced, some of the favorite places that you've loved to mountain bike that you would recommend?
Yeah, well, the whole west coast of North America has such a strong mountain bike culture, from Vancouver through Seattle, Portland. The whole Pacific Northwest is really, really well developed in terms of biking clubs and trail networks. So I would say within Canada, British Columbia is by far the best. Almost every small town in British Columbia has a mountain bike club and a trail network. And then next up would be Washington State and Oregon. They're both really good. Oregon's got an amazing volunteer society that goes all over. It's like government funded, and they do tons of trail building, and there's so much stuff there around Washington State, especially like up north in Whatcom County around Bellingham and those towns. There's tons of riding. And then California is really good too. I was down in LA 2 months ago, and I was pretty surprised by how much riding there was actually around the Santa Monica Mountains. I don't know how much of it is official, but there's a huge culture there and a big riding network out around LA. So I don't have much experience in the Midwest or the East Coast or anything like that. I have never really rode over there, but I know for a fact that the whole west coast of the U.S. and Canada is great.
And Turkey.
And Turkey is pretty good too. Surprising.
Mark Matthews is a professional mountain biker and media athlete. You can check out his adventures at markymath.com and on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at markymath. Instagram, he has 108,000 followers, so you can join him there, and on YouTube at Mark Matthews MTV. Mark, thank you so much for sharing your adventures and your journey. I know a lot of us will be following along. Good luck and stay safe.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Listeners, did Mark inspire you to pick up the sport of mountain biking? Where have you been mountain biking? Let us know by rating this podcast, giving us a review, and sharing it on social media. We have guests every week talking about travel news and trends, so be sure to subscribe to our podcast. We'd sure appreciate your review. It helps bring more awareness to our journalism and original content. And if you have an idea for a future guest on our podcast, please reach out at voyagereport.com. and let us know. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Mark Albert. Bon voyage.
You've been listening to the Voyage Report podcast. Get the scoop on travel at voyagereport.com.